All right, we are live. Just let me hit the tweet button here and we'll be ready to roll. Boom, boom, and bang, bang. Cool. All right, let's do it. Coming down in 3, 2, and 1. And welcome on into what is a controversial post-game edition of the Blue Horseshoe podcast. He is George Bremer. I am Ryan Hickey, live after the Colts fall to the Browns 39-38. And to at least bring a little comedic relief to this game, George, in a game we obviously saw this game transpire in the way it did. Offensive explosion. We said the Indy scoreboard operator is going to be very busy in this game. Points are going to be flying all over the place. And just like we accurately predicted on Thursday, George, a 39-38 offensive explosion, which Colts unfortunately fall on the wrong side of.
I would have lost a lot of money hammering the under on this one. That's the one bet I thought was absolutely guaranteed to come through, and teams almost each hit the number by themselves. They didn't need, I think it was 40. So, 40. They were 1 and 2 points away from the number individually. So, this is why I don't bet. You can see now why I stay away from anything in the financial market when it comes to the National Football League.
That I could not agree more with, because I am with you. I didn't think the Colts were going to win this game, but I felt even more confident that neither team was going to score, especially at the time when we thought it was going to be P.J. Walker. Now, we ended up seeing a majority of P.J. Walker as Deshaun Watson got hurt and missed most of the game after throwing a first quarter interception. But, George, we got to go right to the end, because that is where right now all the controversy is, all the questions are. Colts, personally, I think we're robbed. I think a lot of people would say that the two flags, one, especially the defensive pass interference on the first and goal play where the ball was basically thrown into the stands. And for pass interference, you're supposed to have some sort of catchable element to the play, which there was clearly none of. Let me ask you this, George, because let me ask you this, first of all. I don't want to assume. Were the Colts robbed?
No, they did so many things on their own that came into this too. I mean, I don't think that those were good calls, especially the last one. But I'll tell you that on the pass interference, if you call defensive holding, which is definitely the case, you're going to get the same result. So, I mean, they misidentified the flag. But if you call defensive holding, which he is holding him for most of that run, or illegal contact, you're still going to end up in the same situation with the first down and, at the 1. So from that standpoint, it's unfortunate, because I think Darryl Baker said, in his locker, that these are not flags that are thrown often, which I think he's right on. A lot of times, especially in late game situations, the officials will take into account whether the ball was catchable. I mean, even on the illegal contact on the play, obviously that ball went backwards. It's a fumble. It's, the argument, though, if you're the Brown side, is going to be, well, quarterback held onto the ball a little bit longer because of that illegal contact down the field. So, it's unfortunately part of the game. I think they still end up on 4th and 1 with a chance to end it. The Browns win it by, 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters.
Yeah.
It's going to hurt. And it's one of the things, talking with Josh Downs after the game, you hear all the time, defend every blade of grass. It's a game of inches. When you lose a game by 1 point, and then he said, probably even over in Cleveland's locker room, they're talking about some of the things that didn't go their way, that it shouldn't have even been as close if they had, maybe not made some of the mistakes they made. So 1 point losses are, I think, always the hardest ones to take.
I think both could be true. I think it's fair to say the Colts were robbed, and I think they were, because, again, if that flag is not thrown on Darryl Baker Jr., you get the fumble recovery, you win the game is over. So I think the Colts got robbed, but with that said, they also beat themselves. I think both can absolutely be true, where they beat themselves, did not deserve to win, but also at the same time had a chance to win. Most thought made the game-winning play at the end of the strip sack fumble recovery for the win, and it was taken away. They had Gene Steratore late on the broadcast at the end of the game come on and basically say, for the illegal contact, the first one on Darryl Baker, or I guess the only one on Darryl Baker, because the other one, like you said, was defensive pass interference. He said that in order for it to be illegal contact, you have to impede or basically reroute the wide receiver to make it obvious. And again, Gene is a former referee, at least in this case, said he didn't think there was enough there. he didn't really think that Amari Cooper's route, while there was contact, right? There was contact after 5 yards. That is obviously non-refutable. Was it enough to warrant a flag? And again, you have CBS's head referee basically saying, not really enough there. Time and score as well, unless it's one of those obvious plays where he drags him down or Cooper is mugged, like one of those where you have to throw the flag. When it is ticky-tack like that, it sucks. It frankly does suck.
There's no doubt about it. And it's particularly frustrating when you look at that final drive. Once they cross the 50, to the 50, Cleveland made some plays. Once they cross the 50 to the end zone, they don't make a play the rest of that drive. I'm not going to give them a lot of credit for getting that last yard. I mean, it's obviously they got it, but they got it by the thinnest of margins. That's the only play they make, a 1 yard run that is almost exactly 1 yard. Is it from the 50-yard line in. Everything else is penalties moving the ball forward, and that's just not – that's going to be frustrating. You're always going to end up feeling, like you were robbed when that happens. There's no question about it. I mean, the game looks like it's over at one point. They've got a fumble. They've got a recovery. You're going to take a knee, walk out of here with a hard-fought victory, and, there's a flag in the backfield, and it's illegal contact, and you go from there. So, yeah. I do think you feel a little bit better, not much, because you lose by one, you're not going to feel good anyway. You do feel a little bit better if the Browns had to make some plays. And I think it goes back to, my coaches all through my career, every sport I played in, you can't put yourself in a position to let the call be made. So like you said, there was contact. Is it enough? It was in the eyes of the official, and that's all that matters here. And ultimately, I think if Juju Brents is out there, it might be a different result. But unfortunately, he gets hurt. He's not out there. You've got to go back to Darrell Baker, who didn't seem to have a lot of confidence. He stood up. I'll give him that. He stood up. He was staring people in the eye and saying, he did not agree with these calls. And he felt like everybody else that they were uncatchable balls. And certainly the one in the end zone was only catchable if you were a spectator. But, that's part of the game like anything else. And I don't think you can ignore the last 2 minutes of the first half. I don't think you can ignore the 4 turnovers. There's a lot of other things that the Colts did today that ended up costing them this football game.
I think you said it perfectly, too. That's where the Colts are at fault a lot as well, is that they put themselves in a position where one referee flag does determine the outcome of the game. Again, wrong. Was it the right call? I don't think so. Again, I think the Colts got robbed here. So we're not trying to sit here and tell you that the referees are blameless. I think they absolutely missed the call. I think, again, the Colts should have made the strip sack in order to win the game and should be right now 4-3. But again, like you said, you look at everything so far that's gotten up to that point, which I think was with about 45 seconds left. I forget the exact timestamp of the illegal contact flag, the first one. But so for 59 minutes and let's just say 15 seconds of that game, the Colts made some tremendous plays on offense, made some tremendous defensive stops, but also put themselves multiple times in harm's way to be in a position where one ticky-tack flag does end up changing the game and going against them. That's a frustrating part, George, is like you look at it, I guess what the best way to say is on the other side, if you're the Browns, right? I think a lot of them would say we got lucky. But also to their credit, you lose your starting quarterback, or was it I think the second drive of the game, and you have a backup come in for 95% of the game. You still make plays, and you are also having your historic defense get absolutely shredded, which we'll talk about here in a second offensively, some positives in this game. So you have your backup quarterback and your historic defense is getting shredded by Gardner Minshew and this Colts offense, and you still make enough plays to keep yourself in the game where, again, you get one benefit of a flag that truly changes the entire trajectory of the game going your way, and you eventually capitalize. Like the Browns made enough plays for the first 59 minutes and 15 seconds to be in a position where one flag they could capitalize. On the flip side, the Colts, again, for all the good they have, especially on offense, and I think, again, as well, defensive, they played really well. They, 1 or 2 plays, 1 or 2 less mistakes, that illegal contact is a footnote or doesn't really matter and the game's already over. You let the door open against a team you're having your way with, in part because of self-inflicted wounds, which, again, we kind of talked about even go back to the preseason. That was one of these things this team cannot overcome, and we saw it yet again. Again, wrong call. But with that said, you put yourself in a position, comes down to the referee's judgment, and now you're in a position where you can't overcome it.
To me, it's a flip side of the Kansas City game last year. I mean, you go back and watch that Chiefs game here, and I think they got a taunting foul, and there were a lot of people that said, I don't know in that situation if that's the right call, and it extends the drive, and the Colts go down and finish it off, and they win. And this is just the the other side of that, which is always going to be frustrating, and it's always going to leave you not feeling happy. I think that's the mood in the locker room. I mean, you were talking about that, before we came on the air. And I think one of the big things that I got from the locker room, first of all, a little bit of disbelief, just that they didn't win the game, because I think they believed all the way down really to when they come back on the field with 15 seconds left that they're going to make a play, they're going to get in position, they're going to call timeout, Matt Gay is going to kick field goal and win the game. You have to feel that way, or what are you doing on an NFL field? But they certainly believed for that 59 minutes and 45 seconds or 15 seconds, whatever you were saying, they were going to win this football game, and they had a lot of reason to believe that. They kept coming back. I mean, that's one of the things that we've been talking about again and again with this Shane Steichen team. They keep coming at you. And they did today. They were a perfect example of that. They kept coming back from their own mistakes, from things that were going on around them. And eventually it just, Cleveland at the end of the day got one more yard, got 3 more centimeters than them. And that's what turns it around. So I just think personally, I think it was Shane Steichen's worst game so far. And that's going to happen with a rookie head coach. I think he would love to have the end of the first half back and the way that went. And I also, even on that final drive, I think I tweeted when there's about a minute and a half left, something like that, minute 13, as Cleveland got into scoring range, maybe the Colts had 3 timeouts. I'm looking at the scoreboard right now. They still have 1. It doesn't do them much good. But I think that that's something that, if you call some timeouts there, and even if things go against you, you get the ball back, you've got a chance to maybe make a play. That one's debatable. I think there's coaches that will let it play out in that situation. If they make the final stop, he made the right call. But it's one that I was questioning in the moment. And then the big ones are at the end of the first half. I mean, throwing a tight end screen on, third down there and losing yards, which makes the field goal that much longer. And then deciding even after that you're going to go try a 60-yard field goal. I understand having faith in Matt Gay, which is what he said. But it's a 60-yard field goal. It's not the end of the half. It wasn't a situation where if you miss it, you're just going in the locker room. You knew that if he doesn't make it, they were going to have good field position. And then Myles Garrett, as he's prone to do, makes an unbelievable play, blocks the kick, and it's a 6-point swing because you go from 17-14 up to 17-14 down, and then you give up points again at the end of the half on the possession after that, where you're just kind of not calling plays really well, I guess is the best way to put that. You're backed up and you're trying to throw the ball deep, and Myles Garrett at this point is taking over the game, and it's a strip fumble and it's a touchdown. And you look up and you're behind at halftime, and I think it was completely avoidable. You give up 10 points in a situation there where you don't need to do it. You get the strip fumble, you get the block field goal, and then I'm just now trying to do all this by memory. It was really 13 if you want to go into it. That swing makes it 17-14 them. You come back, you get back in front, you lose the lead on the strip fumble, and then you add 3 more points on because you go 3 and out and give it right back to them very quickly, even after the fumble. And I think there might have been 1 run, maybe 2 runs in that stretch. It was a lot of dropping back, passing deep in their own territory. And I just think the way the Browns offense was playing, it's interesting because you're going to sit here and say, well, they put up 39 points. They were playing really well. They had 5 scoring drives of 40 yards or less, 3 of 20 yards or less, 1 of 0. So It's not like they were moving the ball consistently. The Colts kept consistently giving them short fields. They also had a defensive touchdown in there. You're not going to win very many games in the NFL that way. But I think that at the end of the first half, from like the last half of the second quarter on, there were decisions made by Shane Steichen that really probably helped add 13 points onto the Browns side. In a game, again, they won by 1.
That's the thing. For all the good Shane Steichen did in this game, again, we'll get to the good here in a little bit, but just kind of harp on the negative first, especially in a loss, right? Plenty of good. Again, 38 points against one of the best defenses in the NFL. That's nothing to slouch at, nothing to shoo away. But I'm with you 100% in terms of the end of the first half sequence. I don't mind the 60-yard field goal attempt personally. Again, you see Matt Gay hit 4 50-yarders. I know the longest one in Baltimore was 54 yards. So, again, you're adding 6 yards onto it. But I think so far early in his career, Matt Gay has shown you to be reliable enough to where I don't think the ask of going 60 is outrageous. Like you said, at a non-end-of-the-half situation. But the end of the first half, I think, was just completely, frankly, egregious. Completely egregious, where you have a sack on first down. Now you go from the 11 to your own 6-yard line. Again, you were sitting here under the 2-minute warning. It's a minute 50 left. You can, especially with the Cleveland offense, not move the ball a ton. You don't have to sit back there and feel like, oh boy, if we don't at least get a few first downs here, they're going to march right down the field, score a touchdown. You could have played it conservative. Obviously, we know the next play he drops back again. Gardner Minshew sacked, which, by the way, look, Blake Freeland's been fine. I get he's probably asked to do more early on than they thought. And maybe it's not on him because, again, it is Myles Garrett. But then the Colts have to have a better blocking scheme than having Drew Ogletree try to chip Myles Garrett, not really redirect him, and then having just almost have him at a head of steam where Blake Freeland couldn't get back, either slow in his stance or, again, not enough help on the outside, or even though it is a double team, it's still almost a one-on-one with the best defensive player in the NFL. And obviously, we saw him just completely take over that and end up with a touchdown. But okay, touchdown. Minute 45 left in the first half. You would think, okay, let's learn from that. Cleveland has 2 timeouts left. So let's burn them, run the clock down, and let's hit a tight end screen on third down. Was just so frustrating because the biggest enemy in that situation was the clock. It wasn't the fact that, oh, we got to get a first down here. It's run the ball, and you honestly just drained 40 seconds off because you look, when that third down screen pass was thrown incomplete, there was a minute 26 left on the clock. You bleed 40 seconds off that, George. All of a sudden now you look how, the Browns needed all 126 to get down to field goal range, kick a field goal. Small, right? Really, we're literally talking about one play call on a third down where you're going to punt the ball anyway. But if you run the ball or Gardner Minshew just falls down instead of throwing the ball on the ground to stop the clock, that 40 seconds could be, again, the difference between the Colts winning this game and losing this game. End of the first half, I'm with you. I thought was, of the entire season so far, we had to boil it down, one of Shane Steichen's worst moments was how he handled those back-to-back drives. And again, that's a 10-point swing in a game you lose by 1 in the final seconds.
Yeah, last 2 minutes you give up 10 points, and a lot of it you can come down to play calling, and not just the play calling, but like you said, the blocking scheme and all the things that they were trying to do there. And a 1-point game, that's a huge momentum swing. And again, to their credit, they keep coming back from things like this. They all that happens at the end of the first half. They still come back. They take the lead in the third quarter. They are in the fourth quarter, and the touchdown play by Michael Pittman is probably the best play of his career so far. Breaking tackles, running, 75-yard touchdown. Looking, giving the little Tyreek sign and getting the penalty at the end. That should have been the game winner. That should be what we're talking about right now. But unfortunately, you come out on. Let their backup quarterback go 80 yards. And granted, the end of that drive is questionable, but not all 80. They got the midfield pretty easily, and they got into Colts territory pretty easily. After first and second down, struggling a little bit. They get a big play on third down. They seem to get ahead of steam, and he just kept going. So I think Gus Bradley probably deserves a little bit of the knock on that side. His defense, I think, played better than the scoreboard shows. But at the end of the day, they didn't make the plays they had to make at the end. And I know that's going to hang with them. But I think one of the things, that you see from the locker room is Ryan Kelly saying, yeah, this one there's a 24-hour rule. This one will probably sting a little bit longer than 24 hours just because, there were so many things you could have done that would have changed the outcome of this game.
And I'm glad you brought up to that last drive because you're right. The hyper focus is going to be on the 2 penalties, especially the one illegal contact where you have EJ Speed. Well, by the way, credit EJ Speed for making the play to force the fumble on PJ Walker. Buckner there being for we thought what would be the game-winning recovery. Credit to them at least for making, again, the play we thought was going to win them the game. But I think you're right about the defense. I thought they played really well. And again, 39 points. We'll get to here in a second. The biggest reason why the Browns had 39 points, hint and spoiler, especially if you watch, it wasn't because the Browns offense was very good in lighting it up. But I think you're right. You had third down and 10 earlier in that drive where you let Elijah Moore go for 30 yards. And it's one of those where you need one stop in order to win. You allow a big chunk there to go. Obviously, we know, again, the penalties extended the drives as well, but the defense wasn't exactly blameless either. And it's one of those where the referee's to blame. I think the referee, again, for that call was bad. Shane Steichen's to blame for especially his end of the half. And if you want to question like you are, I'm sure other fans are as well, the decision to kick a 60-yard field goal ended up being blocked by Myles Garrett that set up the Browns for a short field for another score. You want to blame the defense at times for not getting off the field. The biggest, though, right, I think, I can't say person because it's not an actual tangible thing, but the biggest area to blame for this loss, it's the turnovers.
Yep.
I know the last one, Gardner Minshew fumbles, so it adds to the tally, but the game is basically over. You can have 3 costly turnovers that directly add 17 points on the scoreboard for the Browns if you include the block field goal by the Browns that led to their own field goal. That's 20 points. That is 20 points of the Browns 39 they scored, aided or directly given to them by turnovers and a blocked, special teams mishap there from the Colts. You can't have that happen. You can't have that happen to win the game, George.
No, and some of that, you got to give some credit to Myles Garrett for being a freakish, inhuman defender who does things that very few people in this league can do. But you knew that coming in, and you have to have a plan for that, and you can't let those guys blow up your game. I mean, how many times have you heard that from a coach? We're not going to let Myles Garrett be the one that beats us. Well, today it was him and the Colts themselves. That were probably the two biggest culprits in this defeat. I mean, you go back, I was talking about 5 scoring drives of 40 yards or less, 3 of 20 yards or less, and 1 of 0. And a lot of that comes back to the turnovers, where you're just giving them way too good a field position. And a team that doesn't really force a lot of turnovers. That's one of the things we were talking about. They came in here -8. They were at -9 after they turned the ball over at the start of the game to get 4 takeaways. And they walk out of here with a 1-point victory. If the Colts protect the football today, none of Shane Steichen's calls late, in the first half, none of the officiating calls at the end of the game, none of that matters if the Colts protect the football today.
And look, for all the praise we gave this week about the Browns defense, right? And they deserved a lot of it coming into the game. It's the one thing we did not talk about this Browns defense doing a lot and being great at is forcing turnovers. They had 4 today. They had 4 coming into this game, the entire season. So for how dominant they are in the run game, in the pass game, and how great Myles Garrett is amongst other players they have so much talent. And again, as a unit, they have been arguably maybe the best unit in the NFL so far through the first now 7 weeks of the season. The one thing they did not do was force turnovers and really create short fields for their offense. And to do it 4 times, where, again, 1 leads directly to a touchdown. I know Myles Garrett, again, he is unblockable. I get it. Fine. You want to say 1 strip sack? If you want to kind of budget that in, fine. Can't have him be able to do it twice and really wreck a game like that. And then, like I said, Minshew throwing the interception, just a bad read by him. As a veteran quarterback in that situation, part of the reason why he was brought to this team was for his ball security and making good decisions. And now you look at the ledger, George, 4 turnovers by himself, one pick, 3 fumbles today. 4 last week as well. 8 turnovers by Gardner Minshew the last 2 games of the season. Again, we know how the Colts want to win games when he's the quarterback, being a more conservative offense. I know today was not that conservative. We'll get to the positives here in a second, but you can't expect to win games with Gardner Minshew when your quarterback through 2 games just turning the ball over at an insanely high rate.
Yeah, and there's no question about it. I think it's going to be one of these weird games, too, where you're going to go back through and there's 2 sides to everything. And I think that's something that, that we need to acknowledge, as we go through this, because a lot of these guys had really good games, bad games at the same time. Gardner threw for 300 yards. And this time it was with a really good yards per pass attempt. He was over 8 today. He was very efficient. At times, he had some really big plays. He had the 70-yarder to Pittman. He had 659-yarder to Josh Downs. You had a big play to Alec Pierce. They had, I think, 7 plays of over 20 yards against a defense that just wasn't giving that kind of thing up. They weren't giving anything up. The Browns came in with, 1,002 yards allowed coming in, and the Colts almost got halfway there. They almost got to 500. Was a 449, something in that neighborhood they finished with. It was incredible, how by far the biggest yardage day that they've had against them. But at the same time, they couldn't hold on to the ball, the fumbles, the interception. So, with Gardner Minshew, you got to say, well, he threw the ball really well today. He also didn't protect it very well. And that goes both ways. Michael Pittman had the outstanding touchdown catch. We're breaking tackles. He also dropped the pass that wasn't maybe the best thrown pass, but one he will admit he should have come up with and did say that, if you want to blame Darrell Baker at the end of the game, blame him because he had a chance to make that catch and couldn't pull it in. And I think that would have probably been a touchdown on a drive that they ended up getting a field goal on. So there's 4 points right there. But the same thing with Shane Steichen. Okay, terrible calls at the end of the first half. Also, think that it was a mistake not to put Jonathan Taylor back in the game after that big drive. He had the big drive. It looked like Jonathan Taylor was taking over, and they come back out with Zach Moss. And I think that was a mistake as well that they probably need to look into. that rotation, I think it's time to go more in Taylor's favor. I know that there's still a pitch count with him. I know that he's still coming back. He was out for a long time, almost a year. So I know he's still working his way back. But you're starting to see him, and I think it's time to probably give him at least a 60-40 or 70-30 split. Today was, again, close to 50-50. I think it's probably time to give him more of the reins. You're starting to see the real Jonathan Taylor, for lack of a better term, come out. 75 rushing yards. He had over 100 yards from scrimmage. That's – I think you can go and question that. Should Jonathan Taylor have been more involved in the second half? Because we've seen him get hot like this and put the team on his back, and I feel like the Colts didn't give him the chance to do that today. They took him back out. But I don't know all the medical on that, so I'm not going to go too far into it. I just think it's something you can question. The defense, made some huge plays. It looked like for a second that DeForest Buckner had made one of the more interesting interceptions we've ever seen. It gets called back. I know that's the one that Zaire Franklin's upset about, by the way, not the calls at the end. He thinks that interception should have stood. So, I think that's the defense had some really big plays, but at the end of the day too, they didn't get the job done a few times. They gave up a huge run at the start of the game. That again, in a game you lose by one, and second, third play from scrimmage is a 60-yard touchdown run. You can't do that, 69-yard touchdown run. So I feel like it's that way. You could pretty much pick anybody on the roster or any area of the roster. You can talk about something they did extremely well today. But then you can also talk about something they did extremely poorly. And that's how you score 38 points and lose by one.
I'm struggling internally in how to feel about what I'm about to say, because I think you can take it as a positive or a negative. I'm more of an optimistic person, so I'll take it more as a positive. But it's like you look at all of how well the Colts played, especially offensively, but there's still so much they can improve on, where you think you get your quarterback back in Anthony Richardson next year. You continue to hopefully clean up these mistakes. There is, again, a very high ceiling for this team down the road with how young they are, and still how much, how many flashes they show and how well they're playing, despite the fact that, again, at times they're their own worst enemy. Where, in one sense, again, like you said, you almost rack up 500 yards of total offense, and you absolutely pants the best defense in the NFL, and we're talking about just small miscues that lead to losses. Well, you're really going to play that way in offense every single week? No, they're not, right? They're not going to do what we saw today for the next 5 games and be one of the most explosive offenses with Gardner Minshew. And that's what's I'm still going to, again, I'll lean on it more as a positive than a negative, just because with how well they played, 38 points, again, against the best defense in the NFL, there was at least 5, 6, 7 different areas and different mistakes made or things to clean up, where we could be talking about them winning this game by 20, hanging maybe 50 points on the scoreboard. And it's just like you said, DeForest Buckner, I'm not going to get on his offensive lineman. Again, that's a really athletic play he had to make. I'm not going to get on him for that. But, Kenny Moore had an interception that I thought he should have, caught, didn't. That, again, really does change maybe the way the game goes. And you could have Deshaun Watson have a second interception and give yourself a short field, where I know you're a DB. The saying is you play DB for a reason, because you can't catch the ball. That's one where it's right in his chest. You got to be able to finish the catch there and get the interception to make a play. There's a lot. That's part of the reason why this loss is so frustrating, because there's a lot of good that this team did. Also, as we saw, a lot of bad as well. And one thing that's going to be really interesting, George, too, like you said, kind of the shell shockness of the locker room after the game and how they lost and the way they lost. Interesting to see if they do come out next week. If this loss does linger, we've seen plenty of teams not get over a bad loss and have it travel into the next week. That's going to be a good test of truly Shane Steichen's coaching, if he can have his guys ready to play next Sunday.
I don't think it will linger. I didn't get that sense. It's more anger. I think, if anything, it's going to drive them a little bit more, fuel them a little bit more. But it's another tough challenge again next week. And you're going to come back out against a New Orleans team that on paper stacks up a lot like Cleveland does. You got to play better. You got to protect the ball better against another really good defense. You've got to be able to not help out their struggling offense as much as you helped out Cleveland today. And I think that's going to be a really big challenge next week. But the future's incredibly bright. I think that's the thing that you come away with. I still think, one really bad habit that they had last year that they have broken is that they don't see one mistake doesn't sink them. It took all the mistakes we were talking about, some that were out of their control, today to lose this game. They didn't. Last year, it felt like one mistake and it would snowball. We were talking about that, I think, on the last post-game pod, about how you'd have one turnover or one bad call go against you. The Tennessee post-game pod, as we were talking about it, they would kind of go in the tank after just one really bad thing. Today, again and again, things not going their way, a blocked field goal, all the turnovers. They just kept coming right back at them and fighting back into the game and finding a way to take the lead. I think that speaks to Shane Steichen's ability to rally this team in a week, mind you, that was one of the probably most adversity-filled weeks that they've had in a long time. And that's saying something around this franchise. But you lost your quarterback for the season on Monday with season-ending injury surgery. And then a day later, you lost a leader of your defensive line for 6 weeks, 5 now. So, I guess that's one good thing about this game. You check one of the
one game games off.
But it's, that in itself, I wanted to see how they would respond. And they came out today and they got punched in the mouth on the very first series, and they just punched back. And they stayed in the fight the entire way. They weren't perfect. They're not going to be perfect. But I do think that's something, look, if they can keep Anthony Richardson healthy, if Shane Steichen can learn from rookie mistakes that are going to happen. And that's what happens with first-year coaches. They come out and they have mistakes. They learn from these situations. Obvious that some of the play designs he had today were outstanding. There were guys who were wide open in the first half, and Cleveland has not done that all year. Alec Pierce one time was wide open. Josh Downs on the free play, it looked like the Browns quit. It's those moments, I think, give you really a lot of hope in what Shane Steichen is capable of doing. But obviously, they've got a lot to clean up. And look, no team in the league is going to turn the ball over 8 times in 2 weeks and feel good about it.
No, you're 100% right. And again, that's where the excitement comes in, because there's still so much room for improvement, and for how well they played, there's still such another level to go. But you're all right. You look like there was so much room for optimism as we kind of transition from a lot of the negatives. There were so many positives in this game, George, like you're highlighting. And I think, honestly, if I ask you the most impressive person on offense, or the person you were most impressed with on offense today, my answer would be Shane Steichen, to be honest. Because like I said, this was the best defense in the league. You hit on some of the numbers before. They have allowed the Browns to have 52 total first downs in this game. 52, that would have been incredible. 52 first downs total in the season. The Colts got 20. 1,002 yards allowed through 5 games. Colts got 456. With a backup quarterback, again, with a backup right tackle as well playing, you were still able consistently all game long, not just, they got off to a hot start in the first quarter, then fizzled out. For 4 quarters, for the most part, they were going up and down the field and doing whatever they wanted to do with this historically great Browns defense. I think, again, there's a lot of praise to get in here, but Shane Steichen, I think, showed for the faults that he had at the end of the first half and questionable decision-making with the field goal as well, and clock management down the stretch at both end of the halves. For all those questions, I think he deserves an equal, if not more, amount of praise for the position he put this offense in, where, again, we're talking about 38 points on the best defense in the NFL.
And that's why I keep saying, this is one of the strangest games I've ever covered, because you can go back and forth and say, hey, look, Shane Steichen in one area in the last 2 minutes of the first half had the worst stretch that he's had as the head coach so far here in Indianapolis. And the rest of the game had some of the best stretches that he's had as a head coach here in Indianapolis. And that's just it's sort of the way this one went. It's insane. He drew up some incredible plays. He got guys wide open. I thought they were really creative in how they were running the ball early and opening some things up, because we were talking about Cleveland's going to come out and do the same thing Jacksonville did. I don't think they quite did. They weren't always in base. They were playing their defense, but their defense usually stops the run incredibly well. And, today the Colts, their yards per carry was not terrific. It was not, it's not going to floor you. But they were productive, and I think that matters. And you had Gardner Minshew running around, scoring touchdowns in the ground game as well, which at least gives the opposing defense something else to think about. It's one of the things we talked about that was missing with Anthony Richardson on the sideline. Well, now if you're down there in the red zone, you clearly have to be concerned that Gardner's going to keep the ball and run it in himself. It does help. For me, my most impressive offensive player or person, just because of what it means going forward, is Jonathan Taylor. The numbers are not 2021 era Jonathan Taylor numbers, but you saw flashes of that guy today. You saw him make some really big runs in some really key situations. The one drive in particular that he scored the touchdown on, it was just a vintage Jonathan Taylor drive, moving the piles, just keeping his legs moving, being that power and speed combination that makes him who he is. And I think going forward, that's the most encouraging thing, because they are eventually going to get to a point where they really ride Jonathan Taylor more than anything else once he's ready to take that load on. And I think today is a significant step in that direction.
Like you said, even snap count in terms of rush attempts, I should say, even rush attempt count between JT and Zach Moss, each at 18. But like I said, 120 total yards from Jonathan Taylor, finds the end zone for the first time. And especially on that drive where it ended up with him scoring a touchdown, you saw it on a few runs and the screen pass as well. The old JT, the vision, the explosiveness too, where he gets through the hole fast and all of a sudden he's at the second level, making guys miss. George, you are right. He is rounding into form now. And again, going forward next week and on, there's a lot of reason to expect that the old JT of 2020 and 2021 is going to show up here very soon, which is going to be huge for this offense. But boy, oh boy, that was really nice to see. That was really nice to see with for the last year and a half, with the headaches, with the injuries. It was really nice to kind of see just kind of an old-fashioned throwback game from him, where he truly, on every single time he touched the ball, you're kind of like holding your breath of, is this going to be the one where he breaks it? Or wasn't able to truly get that, 60-yard home run like we've seen him do, especially a lot 2 years ago. He's close. He is really, really close, George, and is going to break through here really soon. You said it before also, just to go back to give Shane Steichen a little extra credit as well, in part also with Jonathan Taylor. Explosive plays. Colts had 8 plays of 20 yards or more. We talked, especially after the Jacksonville Jaguars game, this Colts offense couldn't, move the ball past 10 yards. Gardner Minshew, until really the game was kind of over late, refused to throw the ball down the field. Part of it was just players making plays. Part of it was sheer will. Part of it also, too, was great scheme by Shane Steichen to get these guys open. Like I said, Josh Downs had no one in his area code for his first touchdown on the first drive of the game. It was a tremendous job by Steichen with his creativity to get guys open in space. Tremendous will for guys like Michael Pittman Jr. breaking tackles and taking it 75 yards to the house. Great vision by guys like Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss as well, kind of running through, making things happen. 8 plays of 20 or more yards, again, against his best defense. Did not, George, let's just say, shocked to say the least there about that.
No, and that's why I keep saying I think there's been a lot of things that have happened that tell you that Shane Steichen's the real deal. And today was another example of that. You had adversity throughout this week. It was just a week filled with adversity. You had adversity throughout this game, and they just kept coming at you and coming at the best defense in the NFL and putting numbers up. Now, they've got to protect the ball better. Defense has to get one more stop, and so that you can win these games. But there is so much reason right now, I think, to feel good about the direction that Shane Steichen is heading this team. And again, it's taking on his personality. It's a pit bull of a team. They are just not going to give up. They're going to come at you, and you better be prepared, all day long. That being said, my game ball is going on the other side of the ball. My game ball today is DeForest Buckner. I thought he and Myles Garrett were just counterpunching back and forth. It was almost a competition between the two of them to see who was going to make more plays. The quarterback hits. The one ball that he basically volleyed back into the end zone. He was everywhere on a day when you really needed him to be. He had to step up. His tag team partner wasn't here, and he stepped up. I don't think Buckner gets as much attention nationally as he deserves for the way he impacts a game, but I thought he was huge today.
That's a really good one. And like I said, especially his game looms even larger when you take away his running mate in Grover Stewart, which talked about underappreciation nationally. I mean, being the president of the Grover Stewart fan stand club, that he definitely does not get as much attention as he should get. Without a doubt, Buckner played really well. Again, hopefully to add on to what was going to be a great day for him, we thought was going to be the game-winning fumble recovery. Unfortunately, that did not happen. My game ball actually is going to go on the defensive side as well, which is kind of ironic considering with how great the offense was. But Julian Blackman played a hell of a game. He played really well. A nice interception, a tremendous play too, fooling Deshaun Watson as well. Almost had another interception, flying all around the field. We got 2, I believe, just to get this accurate, 2 tackles for loss as well, 5 tackles. So it's not like it stands out in the stat sheet, but I felt like he was flying all over the field on Sunday.
And Rodney Thomas, too, he had the interception, and he
Yep.
had a knockaway in the end zone on that final drive that if they make the stop on 4th and 1, we're probably talking about Rodney Thomas as a
Great
hero
call.
here today. So,
Great
he
call.
played a good game. That young secondary did a pretty good job. Now, obviously, like everything else, because everything in this game, it was like yin and yang. That young secondary did a great job, but also – they get the flags at the end that turns this around. So however you feel about those calls, they do go on their ledger, and that's where they're left. So I think there's a lot to be excited about with this team. I also think a lot of it comes down to what you're expecting. I mean, do you see this team as a team that should win the AFC South this year? Then you're pretty disappointed. But if you want to have something to watch in these last 10 games and them to have meaning and to feel like they can hang around this wild card chase and, make a run, they gave you reason to believe that's possible today.
And especially look at their schedule, too. It's not like it's murderer's row where, okay, they lose this game and now you're facing, the Chiefs, the 49ers, the Eagles in like 3 games in a row where you lose those games and it's over. They're playing a lot of teams where they're on the same level as, if not better, depending on who, which opponent we're talking about given week. It's going to be the win total may be near the same. I mean, they already got 3 right now. They got 4 last year. But again, even if we're not talking about a tremendously high win total team, the excitement, honestly, the joy watching this game, and the rest of the season, I think is going to be 50 times higher than it was really maybe any point last year, just because of how well they play, how well they coach. They give you a reason to care. They don't quit whatsoever. Like I said, that they face adversity. It feels like every single week, going to games, and they still find ways to come out and make plays and keep them in it and bounce back from it. It's a lot of fun to watch. Like I said, that's one where today it's frustrating that they don't get rewarded for it, but it's definitely one where as well, one play here or there one mistake, I should say, that they wipe away on their own. And we're talking about, I think, a different outcome here for sure. To wrap up, George, I want to ask you 2 questions here, just to fully encapsulate the game and kind of lead us into Tuesday's podcast. As this is, in case you're tuning in, this is the Blue Horseshoe podcast post-game edition. George Bremer, Ryan Hickey right here. Check us out if this is the first time you're viewing on YouTube, Blue Horseshoe Pod, or wherever you get your podcasts. Number 1, biggest question coming out of the post game, especially by fans, is this: were the Colts robbed by the refs? Your answer again, George, is what?
My answer is no. That the calls, probably were not the right call. But at the end of the day, they did too many things leading up to that point to really say that they didn't lose the game themselves.
I hate this. It feels like a cop-out, but I think yes and no. I think there's just a flat-out bad call. The defensive pass interference one, again, that you're already down deep in there, move the ball up to the 1-yard line. That was just atrocious. That was, again, like I said, the only one who was in danger of catching that pass is the fan in the front row. Donovan Peoples-Jones, I believe, is the receiver. I mean, I saw this on Twitter, unless he was Victor Wembanyama, he's not catching that. And even still, if you're Victor Wembanyama, I'm not sure if he's big enough to have the range to be to catch that ball itself 2 feet in bounds. So that was horrendous. But the illegal contact, for all the bad the Colts had, again, if the referees just make, I think, the right call and in that case swallow the whistle, the Colts overcome their mistakes to still win the game. So in a way, yes, I think the call was wrong, and the Colts, obviously on the other end of that play, we thought won the game. So I think in a way you can absolutely say they're robbed. But also on the other side of it, like you said, you can't turn the ball over 4 times, also have a blocked field goal as well. Give the Browns off of, if you want to count the blocked field goal as a turnover, let's just say in this discussion, give the Browns in 20 points of their 39 they score off of turnovers. You can't give more than half their point total and expect to win. That's where it's frustrating in the sense that you, again, reduce a turnover, you change even clock management, like we're talking about the end of the first half, where instead of throwing the ball, Shane Steichen runs the ball, bleeds more clock down, and even if you still allow the strip sack by Myles Garrett to happen, but you don't allow, you drain the clock to where the Browns don't have enough time to kick a field goal, again, you lose by 1, you take 3 points off the board at the end of the first half, Colts win this game. So they have themselves to blame as well because of all the mistakes they made to put them in a position where one referee's judgment call truly does change the game and lose it for them. So I think absolutely it's a little bit of both here as to why they do lose on Sunday. But then to spin it forward, George, let me ask you this. Do you feel about this team, better or worse? Like, how do you feel coming out of this game? Because you can look at it both ways here. Is it more optimistic of how well offensive they played and, hey, you were in a tight one with all these mistakes against the Browns? Or is it, yeah, there's some offensive flashes, but at the end of the day, still self-inflicted wounds here, some bad coaching times, bad mistakes by this team that cost them another win again?
I think I'm more optimistic simply because of that fight. I mean, you see it show up every week. They just come at you and they keep, they do not give up. There's a lot of things that they've got to clean up. There's no question about it. And the turnovers have got to, that's got to start right away. You cannot turn the ball over, obviously, 4 times a week and expect to win in this league. That's not going to happen. That average has got to disappear. They've got to start protecting the ball better. But I do think, like I said before, you saw JT come to life. You've got a really I think smart play caller who's doing a really good job against the best defense in the league this year. I think there's a lot to be excited about. Now, this loss is going to haunt them. There's no question about that. It's a huge tiebreaker in a wild card race. Puts them a game and a half behind instead of a half game up. So it's going to haunt them. But I do think that there's long term, especially, I'm more optimistic than I am pessimistic right now.
I am with you. I know a lot of people freak out when the term moral victory is thrown around. I think for where the Colts are this season specifically, I think a moral victory, I think today was a moral victory. I do. Just because, like you said, you have all that offensive success against the best defense in the NFL in the Browns. You show some life. I think Shane Steichen, again, at times really showed how much promise and how legit, how dangerous this offense is going to be when he has all his pieces healthy going forward here, and just how masterful he is at putting guys in positions to succeed. And it is one of those where we kind of harped on the mistakes. And again, some are on coaching. But I think also part of it is just at least for me, in my perspective, I'm going to assume Shane Steichen's going to make some rookie head coaching mistakes. I assume he's going to make some clock management issues and maybe regret a few play calls that, again, you look back, really could have changed the game, because it's still now, his 6th, 7th game on the job coaching. You're going to make those mistakes. And so with where the Colts are, where this is, again, we've talked about it ad nauseum, right? This is a year where wins and losses don't matter as much as they will in the future. This is kind of the one year where it's more about development on the field than his result at the end of the game. I think it's one of those where, because the expectations are low, because of the opponent you're playing, I think you can absolutely say, with how frustrating it was to lose this game in the fashion you lost it, you could still come out and wake up Monday morning still feeling more positive than negative, and still take away, like you said, more positives from this game than negatives here going forward as you look ahead to the rest of the season. And hopefully what is a long tenure with Shane Steichen here in Indy, if you can feel really good about this team, in part for the flashes they showed today. And I'm going to assume, I know it's a dangerous game to play, but assume in years 3 and 4, the mistakes we saw by Steichen specifically today, but also the rest of this team, you hope with a more mature, hopefully championship-ready team, the mistakes we saw today won't be repeated in 2 or 3 years from now.
That's what you hope. I mean, that they're going to find ways to clean this up. And a lot of it goes back to keeping guys healthy, which is, somewhat out of their control. If you've got Juju Brents out there today, if you've got Anthony Richardson, it's a different story. I'm sure the Browns are saying the same thing. If they had Deshaun Watson healthy the whole game, maybe it's a different story for them. So it's the NFL. It's the nature of the league. But I do think the fight that they're showing under Shane Steichen, to me, gives me a lot of reason to believe that this team's going to stay in contention going forward.
Absolutely. Now you got the Saints coming to town again, a winnable game. If you saw that Saints offense on for most of Thursday night against the Jaguars, doesn't have exactly you wobbling in your shoes that the high flying 07 Patriots offense is going to come to town. So it should be another game where you're in it. And especially if, again, we're talking about another late game situation next week against the Saints, just like it was this week against the Browns, you hope the Colts do not put themselves in a position to where, again, it comes down to the referee's judgment and a flag on either for them or against them that does change the game here going forward. So it's one where it's frustrating, right? It's a brutal loss where I think a lot of us, I hate to say, chalked up as a win, myself included. I was getting ready for a joyous post-game pod. I was getting ready for it. Damn it, George, my voice hurts. I was ready for a victory cone. I was ready for the nice, sweet taste of a chocolate cone to hopefully help soothe right now my very achy voice. And so brutal, gut-wrenching, frustrating about not only losing the last seconds, but obviously losing with, in part, a controversy at the end of the game, to say the least. But at the end of the day, more positive than negative, still a more victory, if you will, with how well this offense played and what this team has going forward here. Not the win you wanted or not the result you wanted, but I think overall, I think you can leave Lucas Oil Stadium still feeling positive and that it was a productive Sunday.
That's the thing. They put up a really good offensive game coming off a really bad one. So, they didn't string the two of those together, but they've got to find, ways now to clean things up. And I think that's the challenge going forward. We know they're going to fight. We know they're going to give themselves a chance to win. They've got to find ways to make the plays down the stretch to win these games more consistently.
Is this explosive offense we saw from the Colts sustainable? That's a question George and I will answer the next time we talk to you, which is when? Tuesday. If you're tuning for the first time, check us out. We are here after every single game, also throughout the week, Tuesday and Thursday as well. Blue Horseshoe Podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, guess what? That's the channel right there. We do upload every video. If you're more of an audio fan, check us out. Blue Horseshoe Podcast. Bright blue logo is where you could find us. Still, again, I think a lot to talk about from this game here. We'll kind of wrap it up and start to look ahead to the Saints when we do join you next on Tuesday. So, look, I know it's tough. Try to push through. Maybe, make a good meal to maybe help you forget about end of the game and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. We'll talk to you on Tuesday right here on the Blue Horseshoe Pod.